Welcome to the Motormouth YouTube channel. I'm Zach.
I'm Andrea.
And we do full-length car reviews each and every week. You subscribed, right? So you know we stop halfway through for a segment called Questions, Coffee, and Cars. We've spun it off. We're in standalone thing now. We're at 152. How do you get a question in?
Follow along on Instagram at Motormouth_Andrea. Every Sunday morning I put a post out asking for questions. Once we gather them, the post is deleted and we start the show.
Time now for questions, coffee, and cars.
Your questions from Instagram.
Nissan not joining Honda, good idea or bad idea?
Spin the wheel.
I know.
It's like the world is upside down, Andrea.
It's upside down.
You can't count on anything.
No, I mean, we really thought that was going through. But now Honda basically just wants to take over Nissan, and Nissan said, And then now Mitsubishi is just going to sit on the sidelines and see what happens. Whereas before, Mitsubishi was going to join in too.
You know what? This could be a merger of Nissan and Stellantis. You know, a race to the bottom.
Gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. I really thought they could both benefit from this merger. First off, plug-in hybrid technology from Nissan could go to Honda. Honda's got a great hybrid system. Go to Nissan.
Don't let the facts get in the way of... Like, logic plays no part in this.
No.
I don't understand this. Of course, it's just a control thing. It's who controls what? I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is that when companies start to get desperate, then they start to make moves. They're obviously not desperate enough yet.
Yeah, and I think I read in an article by Forbes that Honda was kind of like, you're taking too long to answer.
I don't think Honda...
You know, it's like, what?
I think if you read between the lines, actually, Carlos Ghosn, the former... head of Nissan, did an interview, I think it was with Bloomberg, and he basically said this was a shotgun wedding. The Japanese government told them, you're getting married and that's the way it is. So I don't think Honda wanted anything to do with it. And so, with them causing a stir, Honda's probably like, good riddance.
Good riddance, or maybe that's why they said, well, we just are going to take you over, and then...
Knowing that's the reaction they would get.
That Nissan would get. I mean, there's a lot of people working for Nissan, so a lot of huge management, so I'm sure they wouldn't like that. So we'll wait and see what happens. Great show, thank you. Are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles not popular by manufacturers? I don't see any new ones as an option. Well, there are a ton of plug-in hybrids available. You've got the CX-70 plug-in hybrid, CX-90 plug-in hybrid, Outlander,
we just drove the new
PHEV.
Mercedes GLC plug-in hybrid that was amazing. The GLE has long range. BMW and Mercedes have them. There's lots of them out there.
Lots.
What did we drive? A Ford or a Lincoln plug-in hybrid? I'm trying to remember.
No, the Nautilus is a hybrid now. The Aviator, they did get rid of the plug-in hybrid, but Zach and I believe there will be another one coming. They haven't announced it yet, possibly. And then the other one is the new Santa Fe. They didn't launch with a plug-in hybrid, but I believe one is coming. You know what brand I really was hoping would come back with plug-in hybrids, because they had the technology early on, was General Motors. The Volt with a V, not the Bolt with a B. The Volt, incredibly reliable. People who own the Chevy Volt love them. They were really reliable, good range, all of that kind of stuff. That technology is on the shelf somewhere at General Motors. I wish they would take it and modify it and put it in other vehicles to expand their portfolio. They're going all in on EVs, but I think there's a window there for plug-ins. I wish they would do it. I did speak to Chevrolet about a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, and they said they're just watching the market. But plug-in hybrids are more expensive. I mean, more complicated technology versus hybrids for sure. So I think people really have to weigh out, does a plug-in hybrid work for them versus a hybrid? And then the cost difference between the two, and will you save on that fuel economy? But right now, there's no rebate in Canada at this time. Yeah, that kills it. So that before it used to be, I'm going to get the plug-in hybrid because I get the $5,000 rebate. In the case of Mazda, it's $2,500 because the range isn't over 50 kilometers. And they were like, it's going to cost me less or the same as if I were to buy a hybrid. So they go for it. But now that has changed. I think, to this person's point, by the way, there are lots of plug-in hybrids. You just have to look them up.
But I think we're going to see this massive surge in hybrids. It's just all brands are going to have to go into the hybrid technology, because if rebates are gone, if Donald Trump is easing on the EPA regulations, he's already done that. In Canada, the rebates are gone. Are we going to have an election around EV mandates? That's probably going to be part of it. So I don't know what's going to happen north of the border long term, but I think that hybrids for so many people just make so much sense.
Yeah, you're saving at the pumps, you've lowered your emissions, it's a small battery. It's a win-win for a lot of people.
And the hurdle to get into one is much, much lower. The bar to entry is the term. Yeah, to get in. It's just, for some brands, it's just, like $1,000 or $2,000 more. And you save that money.
Yeah, well, something like the RAV4 hybrid offers so many different trims for different budgets, and that's really the key for people. Is it worth it to get the Mazda 3 Turbo? I hear there's a lot of problems with the turbo engine. I haven't heard about problems with the turbo engine, but Zach and I both feel that it's not necessary, because the non-turbo, especially in something like the Mazda 3, is very good.
I made a mistake on one of the questions we did a while ago. Somebody was asking about an all-wheel drive hatchback, and then you brought up the Mazda 3, and I said, well, you don't want that because you have to get the turbo, but somebody correctly pointed out that no, you can get the Mazda 3 all-wheel drive with the 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine, and that was the one to get. I appreciate the turbo in a larger vehicle like an SUV, like they used to have in the CX-9, or maybe in the CX-5, but I don't really think you need it. But in that little small car, it isn't a hot hatch like a GTI. It's just a real torquey 4-cylinder, and it's not worth the extra money. No,
and we had the CX-30 one time, and I actually thought I was driving the turbo, and Zach's like, I don't know, is it the turbo? Maybe it's the turbo. Anyway, it was the non-turbo, and it was very good, so I don't think it's necessary. I've got a deposit on a manual VW GTI, and then we get the biggest snowfall of the year here in the GTA, Greater Toronto area. Am I going to regret not going with all-wheel drive Impreza RS?
Well, it all comes down to, as I say, it's funny because we're here in Vancouver. I don't know if you can see out the window there. There's snow on the ground. It's not common for us to get snow. No. And I drove the GTI today in the snow. And there's two things. The tires are number one. It's your ability to drive in the winter is the most important thing.
For sure. And I think that some people are a little bit scared to drive in the snow in Vancouver because we don't get a lot of it. And they don't have the proper tires on their vehicle. So once they start slipping and sliding, they kind of panic a bit. So I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, it sounds like you are a competent driver. I'm sure you've got winter tires. You will put on your GTI. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
You're also going to have way more fun with the GTI than the Impreza.
The one thing you've got to get your head around, and some people just don't like the sensation of slipping around. Slipping around in the snow is the fun part, and that's all part of driving. But you have stability control, traction control. You can start in second gear to keep the torque and the revs down so you don't spin those wheels. It's just a skill set. You just have to learn how to... I grew up in Toronto, and I drove Rabbit. That was one of my first cars I ever had. Front wheel drive Rabbit. And the tires weren't any good compared to the tires we have today. And it was fine.
And back in the day, front wheel drive was the only option at one time. And people got a ton of snow, whether you're in Ontario, Quebec, or you're in the prairies. And they worked it out.
Well, if you're old enough to remember when front wheel drive cars really took off in the 80s, for example, it was marketed as better in the snow because the weight of the engine was over the front wheels. People used to buy front-wheel drive cars because they had better traction versus the cars that a lot of them were sold in those days were just rear-wheel drive.
And it's actually the same with EVs because you've got such a big battery in the vehicle. If you do go with a front-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive versus an all-wheel drive option in an EV, you're going to be fine. You just put on a good set of winter tires, and then also that weight of the battery helps a lot.
The other thing, one quick thing, is if you're in the GTA, they're clearing the roads quickly. It's not that often that you're really driving in heavy, deep snow.
We're sitting in a neighborhood here in Vancouver, and they don't clear any of the residential areas. So it's like, basically ice here now.
Yeah,
because it's so compact.
They clear the main roads.
That's it.
No side streets are cleared in Vancouver.
Nope.
So when you get this, it warms up. The problem with Vancouver is the temperature today, for example, will go up to about 2-3 degrees Celsius, which is just above the freezing mark in Fahrenheit. And then tonight it's going to get below the freezing mark. So you get this, it warms up enough to get sort of liquid, and then it turns into ice. And you do that day after day, and it's just a skating rink.
When we were in Chicago, I just want to add, we were leaving the Blackhawks game against the Edmonton Oilers, by the way, and the Oilers won in overtime. But they had freezing rain, and the rain had stopped, but the pavement was a sheet of ice. And we were walking back to the shuttle bus, and we're like, holding on to each other. I've never experienced that before.
That's
I know you do.
You're
in
from
Ontario,
Vancouver,
and
Andrea.
And the prairies. I know. Vancouver, nothing.
Andrew's like, what is this crazy
What
stuff
is
called
this?
freezing rain? I'm like, oh yeah. Sometimes you'd wake up in the morning and there would be like ice like that covering your whole car.
Can't believe
Yeah,
that.
brutal.
And I mean, we could barely walk. I can't imagine people who are driving. It doesn't matter what kind of a tire you have. You're still going to slide.
You're going nowhere in that stuff.
Yeah. I watch every episode of your shows religiously, and my colleagues at work have started to as well. Great. Questions for a coworker of mine. Mitsubishi RVR, Corolla Cross, or Chevrolet Trax?
Okay, you want to do a 3-2? We haven't done a 3-2-1 in a while, Andrea. We haven't done a 3-2-1 in a long time. I know what I'm going to pick. You ready? I got it.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Corolla
Trax.
Cross. So a couple things about them. Trax is front-wheel drive only. RVR
We just went through all of that.
and Corolla Cross all-wheel drive. There is a front-wheel drive option, I think, still for the Corolla Cross. I know RAV4 has gone all-wheel drive. But so for me, RVR, the way I look at it, is like the best deal ever. In Canada, it starts around $26,000. I've actually pulled some numbers, so let me get it accurate. Okay, RVR starts at 25,000 Canadian. It goes up to 36,000. Corolla Cross starts at 31,000, goes up to 39,000.
And what about the Trax, Andrea?
And the Trax starts at 27,500 and goes up to 32,000. So some differences: RVR and Corolla Cross have a CVT. You've got two engine options with the RVR, 2-liter and a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder.
Get the bigger one.
148 horsepower or 168 horsepower. Yes. Corolla Cross, a 2-liter 4-cylinder, 169 horsepower, and then you've got the Trax with an automatic transmission, a 6-speed, but a 1.2-liter turbocharged engine. The horsepower isn't great, 137 horsepower, but it's that torque number, 162 pound-feet, which is great.
They can't make enough Chevy Trax because it is obviously this colleague of yours is looking for a value vehicle. I can tell that because you've got the RVR in the mix. And the only really compelling reason to buy the RVR is because of the price, because it's an old car. It's been in the market for a long time. The upside of that is it should be fairly reliable. They'll be making it forever. Now, the Chevrolet Trax, they just can't make enough of them. It's become such a massive hit for Chevrolet because it's so inexpensive. And you don't even need to get top trim. I was picking up a press car from one of the huge Chevrolet dealers we have here, and he said it's the base model everybody wants because it comes really nicely equipped out of the box, even on the base model. And it's a front-wheel drive only. The last question we had about winter tires, you can get by with that. It's big in the back seat, big cargo area. That's why I'm a fan of the Trax.
I like the Trax too, but I'm still going to stick with Corolla Cross for resale value and wonderful reliability. I have a question on EV insurance, as a lot of people were not expecting it to be that high since they don't get stolen, but I am hearing the repair cost is so high that increases insurance premiums. Is it true? Because it discourages people from buying an EV. Any views from your side? Well, there isn't a lot of maintenance with EVs, but if you do have to replace the battery in an EV, if you impact it yourself, not about the battery having issues, that is on the manufacturer and would be part of the warranty. But let's say you impact the battery and it really does need to be replaced and you can't replace cells within the battery, then yes, mostly the vehicles are written off.
There's way more electric cars being written off because if you just, say somebody comes through a stop sign and hits you on the side, with a regular car, they can repair that. Now, it might be expensive, but it can still be repaired. With an EV, if that impacts any part of the battery module that they put in the bottom of the car, for the most part, they're writing it off. So way more electric cars are getting written off, which is environmentally friendly. No. So that's just something to consider. So when you buy an EV, you're getting lumped in with all the other EVs in that category for repair costs. So accidents that would be repairable on other cars are not repairable on some EVs. They get written off more, and that's the problem. And in the UK, I'm trying to remember, I read all these articles from different places. The UK, the cost to insure EVs is really high, and some insurers are not insuring them anymore.
No, it's become a real problem. I mean, even here, you get an EV and the insurance is going to be more, but you have to weigh all that out because there's such good deals right now on EVs, say low lease rates, there's money on the hood, you're not buying gas. You may find that it kind of balances out per month if you're really looking at payments. So it is a bit of a spreadsheet there. Love how you two present your info in the simplest way for a newbie like me. Great. I had a question regarding the new Santa Fe Hybrid preferred trend versus the Palisade Hybrid 2026 coming later this year. Is it worth waiting for the Palisade if more space is a criteria? I'm a bit worried about this being their first-gen hybrid, but is that a real concern?
Well, it's not a first-gen hybrid. I mean, they'd be making hybrids in other products. I think what you're getting at is this larger displacement hybrid that they have in the Santa Fe. And the rumors are that there's going to be a similar kind of system going to be going into the Palisade.
Yeah.
We don't have any official confirmation on that. We speculate that that's going to be the case. You see the trend with mid-size SUVs like Highlander going to a turbo 4-cylinder, and you see Atlas going to a turbo 4-cylinder. So the brands are downsizing from V6s, whether they're going to offer a turbo 4 or go to a turbo 4 hybrid system in Palisade. That's all speculation.
The rumor is it's going to be a 2.5 liter hybrid, which Genesis is also going to use, but these are all rumors. The Palisade is supposed to be bigger, so you're going to have it probably be bigger than the Santa Fe, because every time they redesign a vehicle, it tends to get bigger, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So would I be concerned? I think with any new vehicle, you should be concerned.
Wary, yeah.
You just never know. Sometimes it's better just to wait it out the year.
But they're not new to hybrids. I mean, they've
No.
been doing hybrids. So they're integrating the hybrid system with maybe a larger engine. So just so you're aware, the Hyundai Tucson uses a turbo 4-cylinder hybrid, and with excellent results. In fact, that's our favorite one of the Tucsons. So they're going to do the same thing. We suspect it's going to be a turbo, larger displacement 4-cylinder, turbo hybrid. So it's the same thing, it's just with a bigger engine. So I don't see why it would be, it's not like they're baking a cake from scratch.
No.
Well, you do bake a cake from scratch.
You do.
Maybe it's a little Duncan
bake
Hines,
cakes.
maybe a little Duncan Hines in there.
My birthday's coming up. Are you going to bake me a cake or are you going to buy one?
I am going to buy you one because you're gluten-free, and I don't know anything about gluten-free.
No.
I don't know if Duncan Hines does a gluten-free.
No, and also...
Or Betty Crocker? Should I go and make you a Betty Crocker?
No, the boys would like that, but I couldn't eat it.
No, I got to go and get Andrea a gluten-free cake.
Actually, we have a wonderful bakery near us that's a gluten-free bakery, so Zach always goes and gets
It's delicious.
an amazing
It's
cake.
so good that when we eat it, we're like, this is as good as any other cake.
No, it's so good.
One more, Andrea.
Okay, love the show. I know you have mixed feelings about electric cars, but what would it take for you to add one to your fleet? And if you had to choose one in 2025, which one would it be?
It's funny because we were at the Chicago Auto Show, and I was talking to our colleague Anton Jobert from Quebec, and the Rivian, the little Rivian, is it the R3? Is that, do you remember the R3?
Or R2?
I think
Is
it's
it
the
the
R3, the one that
R3?
looks is the hot hatch looking one.
Yeah.
That one interests me, Andrea, because I just think it's so cool looking, and I think that is like a perfect. It all comes to the price. I am all for electric cars. I like cheap and cheerful. I love the Chevy Bolt because the Bolt wasn't expensive, and Antoine has one, and he agrees. He goes, that's why he bought one, because it was cheap.
And also, he got the rebate and everything in Quebec, so he really brought that price down. We like electric vehicles, but we own all our vehicles. So to make a jump to an electric vehicle just doesn't make sense to us. I mean, I don't want to have monthly payments and buy a new vehicle. Electric vehicles are not inexpensive. I agree with Zach. I would get something that costs less. I know some people are not crazy about something like the BZ or BZ4X from Toyota because of the range, the horsepower, the charging is slower than some of the others. But boy, Toyota is putting a lot of money on the hood. They've got a lower interest rate. And I think for what we would use it daily, that would be a great choice. I also really like the Volkswagen ID4.
I just want a little runaround hatchback. I just like we drive our GTI. It is the perfect city car. Like when you go to Europe and you see Golfs everywhere, it's like when you're in Rome or Paris or wherever it is, you see the Golf and you go, that's the perfect size car. It can do a lot and it's small enough to park anywhere. And I love that about a little electric car you can just bomb around in the city. If I lived way out in the suburbs and was doing an hour commute every day, I'd want something bigger, but that's what I would like. But there's nothing that really jumps out at me. This Rivian looks cool to me.
But it's not going to be inexpensive.
And it's going to be 2027 apparently.
Yeah. And the Volvo EX30, I think it's kind of fun. I like it, but it's priced too high in Canada. Better in the US for sure. And then the other one I like is like a Countryman EV. But the price of that is high too. So I would definitely drill down on the price, find something that's affordable and that works with kind of our lifestyle. I would be happy with that.
Plus our son is a level 1 electrician. We got to wait for him to get to level 4 when he becomes a journeyman so he can put in the charger for us.
We've already told him he'll have to do that.
He's like, are you paying me? And we're like, no, we're not paying you.
No payment. Payment.
I'll buy you some beer.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're all out of time, Andrea. How do you get a question in?
Follow along on Instagram at motormouth_Andrea. Every Sunday morning, I put a post out on Instagram asking for questions. Once we gather the questions, the post is deleted and we start the show. Thanks for watching.